Earlier, we introduced to you the concept of variables, whereas we define variables as a definite set of characteristics in which the members of the group really differ or vary from one another. Now, we also discussed or we also mentioned that variables are generally classified into two. We have quantitative and qualitative. Now, in order to proceed with our discussion, we are now to discuss qualitative variables and the nature of qualitative variables. So, in order to discuss this type of variable or general type of variable, let us have the example of the variable sex. Okay? So, sex here is our variable. It is a characteristic. Now, data that can be obtained from the variable sex can be male or female. Okay? So, this can be its possible values, male or female. Okay? So, let's have another variable. So, let's say we have the variable civil status. Civil status. So, the possible values for the variable civil status can be single, it can be married, okay, divorced, or widowed. Okay, divorced and widowed. Okay, let us have another one. Let's say we have the variable okay, so let's say we have the variable employment status. Okay, employment status. So in employment status, the possible values can be student, can be employed, okay, can be self-employed, and can be unemployed. Okay, unemployed. Now, using these simple examples, okay, using these set of characteristics and set of possible values, how can we define or what can we infer about qualitative variables? So, in identifying qualitative variables, do we use our five senses? Okay? So, let's say for another example, let's have the variable taste. So, the variable taste can have the possible values sweet, sour, okay, bitter, can have umami, etc., etc. Okay? So, let's say we have another variable. Let's say the variable smell or odor. Okay? Let's say we can have bad odor, we can have odorless, and we can have pleasant odor. Pleasant odor. Okay? So, meaning to say, did we use our five senses? Obviously, we use our five senses. We have the sense of smell, sense of taste, and also in identifying these variables, okay, in identifying the possible set of values for these variables, we use our senses. So we use the sense of sight, okay, the sense of hearing, and etc., etc. So meaning to say, okay, qualitative variables are those variables that can be observed, okay, or that can be determined through the use of our five senses. And when we use our five senses, what method is used or what method is present? The method of observation. Okay? So, how can we define qualitative variables? Okay? So, qualitative variables, these are characteristics okay, qualitative variables are characteristics that can be determined through observations. Okay? So that is one definition of qualitative variables. They are the characteristics that can be determined through observations because we use our five senses. Okay? Next, another thing. When identifying qualitative variables, what did you notice? What did you notice with its data or possible values? How are they expressed? Okay? So, the possible values for the set of characteristics of qualitative variables, they are what? They are expressed or presented through the use of words. Okay? Through words or statements. So, meaning to say, qualitative variables have possible values expressed through words or statements. Okay? And lastly, okay, how do we observe this possible values? If they are in the form of words or statements, can we say that they are measurable? Of course, the answer is no. They are not measurable. So meaning to say, qualitative variables, they are not measurable. They are not measurable. So the possible values are not measurable. They are descriptive in nature. Okay? Because they are expressed through words or statements and not in numerical values. So to repeat once more, qualitative variables are characteristics that can be determined through observations. They are not measurable and they are expressed through words or statements. However, okay, in continuing our discussion about qualitative variables, okay, in continuing, however, there is still a misconception dealing with qualitative variables. Okay, qualitative variables. So there is still a misconception. And what is that misconception? Okay, earlier we said qualitative variables are those variables that are expressed through words. So meaning to say, it is not commonly expressed through the use of quantities. Okay? So, the use of quantities is not commonly used in qualitative variables. However, okay, what do you think? Can we classify some numerical values or as qualitative? Okay, can we classify some numbers as qualitative variables? So, let us take a look at this example. Let's say in a basketball league. So, basketball. Okay? Let's say in a basketball league. The league players or the basketball players wear distinct jerseys. Okay? So, they wear distinct jerseys. Okay? And in each jersey, we all know that jerseys have number prints at the back part. Okay? Now, for example, there is a certain basketball player with the jersey number of 14. Okay? So, let's say, Ilaw 14. Okay. So, for example, this certain basketball player with the jersey number of 14, okay, scored, okay, so let's imagine this is a basketball hoop. So, the player wearing the jersey number of 14 scored a 3-pointer shoot. Okay? So, the basketball player scored a 3-pointer shoot. Then, the commentator would say, and 14 made a 3-point hoop score for their team. Right? So, we can say that 14 is a possible value. A possible value of what? Okay? Jersey. Jersey numbers. Okay? So, the possible value is 14. So, meaning to say, we have numerical values. However, Okay, can we say that the 14, the number 14, imprinted at the back of the jersey shirt of the player means something? Can we say that this number 14 have a significant definition? Can we say, can it have a significant contribution? Okay, let's take a look at this one. So, let's say that the number 14 in the jersey of the certain basketball player, can we say that it measures the height? Can we say that it measures the number of score? Can we say that it measures the number of shooting ability? Obviously, the answer is no. It cannot measure these things. Okay? So meaning to say, it is it meaningful or meaningless? It is meaningless. How so? How is it meaningless? Okay? Meaning to say, the numbers that are meaningless cannot be measured. Can't be measured. Okay? So, what was the number 4? Okay? So, what is the purpose of this number behind the jersey? The jersey number. So, this particular number can be used to identify names. Okay? Identify names of what? Of a particular player. So, meaning to say, when the commentator states the number 14, it is actually pertaining to this player. Okay? So, meaning to say, 14 is a possible value of the variable jersey number. However, this number or this quantity is meaningless. It is meaningless in a sense that it cannot be measured. So what is the main purpose of this number? It is just to identify names. So meaning to say, we can classify some numbers or some numerical values as qualitative variables given that their only purpose is to identify names and not to measure things. Okay? So, the numbers that are meaningless cannot be measured and has the ability to call only a name of a certain person or object. So, these numbers are qualitative. Okay? So, other examples of qualitative numbers. Okay? Other examples of qualitative numerical values are as follows. So, let's say we have the house address number. Okay, house address numbers. So, in a particular subdivision, we have, let's say, block 44, lot 44, block 12, lot 13, and so on and so forth. So, these numbers do not mean anything. They do not measure the quality of the house. They do not measure the number of streets to be passed. Or they do not measure the, let's say, they do not measure the height of the house and whatsoever. So, meaning to say, these numbers are meaningless. They are just used to identify the names of the house. So, meaning to say, house address numbers are example of numerical values that will fall under qualitative variables. Another example is the zip codes. Okay, zip codes or the postal codes of a certain area. Let's say we have cell phone numbers. Okay, cell phone numbers or telephone numbers. Because in reality, you cannot compute cell phone numbers. They are just used to, let's say, identify the name or identify the user. Okay? We also have tracking numbers. Okay? In deliveries, tracking numbers are used. But they are not used to measure how far the distance and whatsoever. Also, we also have number rankings. So, the honor roll, the rankings in the honor roll, okay, the numbers used in the rankings are meaningless. Okay? Why? Because let's say, for instance, we have the top 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's say number 1 is abulad. Number 2 is abuso. Okay, number 3 is, let's say, koronasyon. Okay, number 4, let's say, is hidalgo. And number 5, let's say, is Valencia. So, the numbers here pertain to the ranking. However, can we say that the person at rank 1 is much superior than the person at rank 5? Obviously, we cannot really measure it. The distances are meaningless. Okay? They are just used to identify the names on a certain ranking. So, we just specify the names, okay? The number rankings do not certainly measure anything. However, the only measured thing in rankings is the average of the certain person, let's say in academic performance. So, that is the time that numbers will be meaningful. So, let's say the average of abulad is at 96, then abuso is at, let's say, 94. Koronasyon is at 81. Something like that. So, these numbers will be meaningful. However, these numbers in the rankings are meaningless because they are just used to identify the names. Okay? So, we just use it to specify names. Kaya, di ba, pag nagtatanong tayo, sinong top 1, sinong top 2, the numbers don't actually mean anything, but these numbers can pertain to the person who has that ranking. Okay? So, that would be the one type of variable. Okay, the one type of general variable, and that is qualitative variable. So in our next video presentation, we will now be dealing with the other general type of variable, which is quantitative variables.